Hi everybody, hello, hello. Alrighty, let's just get everything sort of set up and settled. You should do the same on your end as well. Starting with turning your phone off, eliminate the distractions. And we'll let people kind of slowly start hopping on. Let me know how the audio is. Let me know if you're here, who you are, how you're doing today. There's one or two of you, so give me a little hello in the comments. Today we are just gonna do a little wind down, just like a really relaxed, chill little session, and I'll sort of take you into my personal wind down routine. If you're anything like me, routine and just the word routine used to kind of stress me out. I'm that free-spirited, I have ADD, and the word routine seemed really oppressive, if you will. But now I really look forward to my morning and my evening routines because I allowed them to have some flexibility. I've built them into just like an enjoyable experience, and it's just personal time for me. And so I want to share that with you and offer you that sort of structure into an evening wind down so that you can move into the evening and into your sleep and wake up tomorrow feeling rejuvenated and refreshed. And so we are just going to have a little sneak peek into the little rituals that I do in my evening routine, starting with some tea. And in order to do that, you've got to get the vibe right. So make sure you do whatever you need to do to set up your space for an evening wind down, if you will. So I have some candles over here. Actually, my candle just went out. So let's take a moment and get set up. Grab yourself some tea, do what you need to do on your end. If you were here with me, I'd pour you a cup and I'll light a candle. I think the best part about having these routines is really when you start to incorporate all of the senses into that experience and really allow it to just be immersive and relaxing. Get a little incense going, light some candles. Whatever feels right to you, might want to grab your journal. I see a few people are hopping on. Give me a hello in the comment section. We should connect. Because like I say, meditation and these sorts of practices are really personal practices, but they're also, through and through mostly about connection and unity. And so the more we can connect with each other, the better your personal practice becomes. Hopefully by now, you're doing the same as me and getting your space, getting the vibes right. And I thought we would start off today just by reading and reflecting on a passage from the Tao Te Ching. If you aren't familiar with the Tao Te Ching, the Tao Te Ching is the original text that created the yin and yang. Okay, so you've got the black and white, the yin and yang, right? Sounding familiar? Hi. And Tao translates to mean way. So Tao Te Ching, the flow of things. It's like nature's and the universe's natural order and flow and rhythm. Okay. And it's said to be written by Lao Tzu. And I currently am on, I read it regularly and I like to go back through it. It's full of little paradoxes, hence the yin and yang, black and white. So seemingly paradoxical phrases that actually end up having a lot of congruency. And because they're so poetic, each time I read it, I find new meaning in how it relates to my own life. And so perhaps you'll have the same experience, where as I read these chapters, you can reflect and find deeper meaning in some of the passages. So, 29 is the chapter that we're on, and it's about control. So it says, trying to control the world, ? I see you won't succeed. The world is a spiritual vessel and cannot be controlled. Those who control it fail. Those who grasp lose. So go forth. Some are led. Some weep. Some blow flutes. Some become strong. Some superfluous. I like that word. Although I'm not sure I always say it right. Superfluous. Some oppress, some are destroyed. Therefore the sage casts off extremes, casts off excess, casts off extravagance. Time to digest that just a little bit. We'll go back through it and sort of break it down here. Trying to control the world, right? In what ways are you trying to control your life? A lot of meditation and this particular practice, a mindfulness practice, a yoga practice, a lot of these practices, self-care practices, are really about relinquishing control. Letting go and allowing yourself to go with the flow of the unknowns. And the more you are open to the unknown of the future, the easier it is to ride those ebbs and flows of life, right? Relinquishing control. You don't resist, right? So trying to control the world, I see you won't succeed. The world is a spiritual vessel. In Taoism, we talk a lot about a vessel, of a container, of when you allow yourself to be a spiritual vessel, it's about being open to, right? And if the world itself is a spiritual vessel, it's open to all your different energies, your inputs, right? And if you treat it, and if you are yourself, if you match that energy of this openness, what might that be like? Something to ponder. The world is a spiritual vessel and cannot be controlled. Right? Those who control fail. Those who grasp lose. Right? Grasping is efforting, right? If we can just let go. So if you've ever been in meditation class with me, sometimes we do this exercise, and you can try it with me here now, where you put out your hand and you squeeze a fist really, really tight, and you see how much energy you put out in a grasped fist, right? And then you release it and really try to let your fingers go and relax, effortless. There's no trying in effortlessness. There's too much trying and grasping. Just the best metaphor I can come up with is when you're trying to lay on your back and float in a pool or in the ocean, and you allow your breath and the waves of the ocean to kind of bob you up and down. You don't sink. You might drop a little and rise a little and drop a little and rise a little. But as soon as you start to effort, as soon as you start to resist this, you start to go under the water and the waves go over you, or you start to sink a little, right? Those who grasp lose. Some go forth, some are led, some weep, and some blow flutes. Right? Some become strong, some superfluous, some oppress, some are destroyed. Right? So this is that yin-yang. Sometimes we go forth, sometimes we are leaders, sometimes we lead, sometimes we weep, Sometimes we blow flutes in that we celebrate. Some become strong, right? Some superfluous, some oppress, and some are destroyed. And this is the part where you kind of have to know a little bit about Taoism to understand what is being said here. He says, therefore the sage. And the sage is an overarching term, sometimes referred to as a political leader, but the sage is like a pure, grown leader of a Taoist community. So the sage is someone who leads from behind. In Taoism, and the best and maybe the only example of a Taoist community, if you want to nerd out on it, is called the Yellow Emperor. Right? And nobody knew who the leader was because it was said that he led from the shadows. So when he's talking about the sage here, therefore the sage, he's talking about this sort of perfect Taoist leader. And by perfect, I don't mean inhuman, right? Perfectly human. He casts off extremes, casts off excess, casts off extravagance. So part of Taoism, that yin-yang, is really finding balance, the middle, right? Taking that middle road, not too much, not too little. Finding your own balance in life. Simplicity. And now that I'm looking at the page previous, I'm tempted to read a little for you from this as well. Because the sage is talking about giving this middle road, which I think is a really valuable lesson when you're thinking about your own self-care practice. Where in your life are you experiencing excess, extremes, extravagance? Where can you bring it back to simplicity, into the middle? Yes. So I'm going to read you this passage as well. It says, know the male, maintain the female. So here you got that yin-yang. Become the channel of the world. So balancing both your masculine and your feminine energy allows you to channel all the energy of the world. Become the channel of the world, and tea will endure. Tea, right, is like these subtle influences of the way. Return to infancy. In Taoism, they talk a lot about being a baby and how within that infancy, right, you aren't wrong or right, you're pure. Know the white, sustain the black. Become the pattern of the world. Yin, yang, ups, downs. Life is like this. Return to the uncarved block. So this is a similar metaphor to the infant. The uncarved block is a really common theme within Taoism. The uncarved block, right, we think about all of the impressions that have taken over our minds, right? Those impressions. Uncarved block is like letting go of limiting beliefs, letting go of restraining who you are. Uncarved block is like allowing the purity of yourself to come forward, right? Sometimes we try so hard to objectify ourselves, to become something. It reminds me a lot of, if you're familiar with Ram Dass, Ram Dass talks about somebody training. And you spend a great deal of your life trying to be somebody and define yourself and objectify yourself. But sometimes when we let go of those labels, those societal labels, when we let go of those is where we find the truest nature of ourselves. That is the uncarved block. It goes on to say, know honor, sustain disgrace, become the valley of the world, and tea will prevail. The valley of the world and tea will prevail. The valley in Taoism is low, and yet it's where all of the nutrients pours into. It says when you dwell in lower places, you find that balance that nature naturally finds. Tea will prevail, which is the subtle influences of the way, the Tao, all the energies, right? It says return to simplicity. And this is kind of where it links back to that sage. Return to simplicity. Simplicity divided becomes utensils. Okay? Now remember, this is just poetry, so add in your own interpretations, your own meaning. Just take in the beauty of the words. You don't need to think too hard, but there are some deeper meanings here. Simplicity divided becomes utensils that are used by the sage as high officials. But great governing does not carve up. So let's break some of that down, why don't we? Simplicity divided becomes utensils. So when you break down simplicity, within simplicity is a bunch of little bits of utility, okay? So if you're asking yourself, how do I bring more simplicity in my life? Ask what utility, what tools you need. What is the utility? What are all the little bits and pieces, right? Because it's talking about all these bits and pieces divided to come together. Their utility creates simplicity. And then he goes back to this idea of the sage, that are used by sage as high officials. So we're getting a little more into the political side of Taoism here. In that sages, right, the best and the highest of leaders, the greatest of Taoist leaders, that they follow simplicity because they are driven by utility. However, right, so when we're thinking about the bits and pieces of simplicity and that utility, he says, but great governing does not carve up, meaning that the purpose of governing is to bring unity, right? And you can say that for yourself. If you're going to govern your life, if you're going to rule your life, and you're thinking about the utility of your own simplicity, and I know we're getting a little heady here, but bear with me, right? That it should always be towards the end of unifying, of bringing harmony to all the pieces, not to break them apart. Simplicity is both for the sake of harmony, and we arrive at that harmony through utility. Something like that. That's the nice thing about the Tao, is that you can read it again and again, and you'll get little bits, and it's like piecing together a little puzzle. I like both the simplicity and how within that simplicity is such deep, profound meaning. So, the Tao Te Ching is a really important part of my own personal evening wind down. And another part of my own personal wind down, which I don't usually share on here because I know it can get a little woo-woo, is I like to read tarot cards. So let's talk about that for a minute. Tarot cards, are they magical? Who really knows, right? Do I buy into all the metaphysics? I don't know. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, it resonates so much that I get a little freaked out, you know. It's just, but why I think it does on a very practical, non-metaphysical level, why I love reading tarot cards, is the tarot card really is the human journey. So each card tells a story of, it starts with the Fool, okay, is the main character of this story, you will. So within these cards is a very generic tropes, all these different stages of life that are all very relatable. And so when you shuffle them up and you pick out a few cards, it pieces together a certain perspective. It creates a story. And that story is so relatable that you're able then to take your own life and put it through the filter of that story and gain really deep insight. And so that's what I really love and why I've included tarot cards into my evening routine, is not because I think that there's any sort of metaphysical properties to them, in that, you know, I don't claim to think that there is something magical going on here, although there perfectly well might be. You never know, right? But my point is that humans relate to stories, and each one of these cards has stories and insights, and when you take time to pause and reflect and to see your life through that lens, I promise you that you will gain very deep insights. So we are going to do a little reading. So if you are on our little live today, this reading is for you to reflect on your own life through the story of the cards, whatever it shall be that they tell us today. So what story are we all sort of collectively putting out there? And we'll shuffle them all up nice and good. And I'm going to let you pick. Are you choosing? Take time to think about it, to reflect and find the right one. Okay. Okay. I'm going to pick two more because we're creating a story here. So take some time. Think about the insight. Think about what you've been pondering. Where do you need a little more insight in your life? Allow the mind to go there. Okay, I'm getting that you would like this card here and this card here. Okay. First we have the Seven of Cups, okay? Now, as you look at the Seven of Cups, you see all these different cups coming out of the clouds, right? And this guy is looking at all of them, and all of them seem to have these gifts, but if you look closely, I don't know how well you can see the card on the camera. I know it's got a bit of a sheen on it, so let me see if I can get it to reflect properly. Can you see? Okay, so some of the gifts appear a bit ominous, while some seem rather nice. So while I've been reading cards for years, I still like to use, if you like to and would like to get into tarot, a really good resource is Biddy Tarot. I really like reading from her description of the cards. She does a really wonderful job with them. So let me read from you what she has written about the Seven of Cups. So Seven of Cups is about opportunities. It's about choices, right? So you see he's got all these cups in front of him and he has to make a choice. It sometimes has to do with wishful thinking and possibly even illusion, okay? So this card says Seven of Cups is a card of new opportunities, choices, and at times illusion. When the Seven of Cups appears in your tarot reading, you have many options and opportunities of which to choose from. But be careful, you might be prone to unrealistic ideals, okay? So where in your life do you need to be a little more grounded when making your choices? An opportunity with promises of more money or more fame or more power might sound appealing, but as you look deeper into what is being offered, you realize it's not everything it's cracked up to be. So you don't want to let your ego pull you in a specific direction. What's more important is for you to check in with your higher self, evaluate the options, Dig below the surface to discover what's really involved with each of these options. The good news is that you have all of this opportunity, right? It's just about being really grounded and really centered to be able to navigate the best path for you. Let me know in the comment section if that is resonating. So the next card that we have, and if you like, you can take just a moment to reflect on that while I pull up our next card. Next card we have is the Two of Pentacles. Okay. Again, with the shiny cards. I love this shiny deck, but sometimes it is a little hard to see. There he is. You can kind of see him there. So you'll notice down here that there's these waves and this boat. This is representing the ups and downs of life that we actually just talked about with the Tao Te Ching, right? Riding that flow out. You see that he's juggling these two coins. So the pentacles has to do with the material world. Not just money, but material possessions. And you can see that it's in an infinity sign. Okay? And he's kind of juggling, and he's a little bit on one foot. He's like trying to, it looks like a little balancing act, and that's really what this card is about. So let's see what Biddy has to say about the Two of Cups. Of Pentacles. Balancing ups and downs in life, kind of juggling different material types of possessions in your life. So, she says multiple priorities, time management, prioritization, and adaptability. So where in your life do you need to find more balance between your priorities? Where can you adapt a little bit more, be a little more fluid to life's ups and downs? So she says, when the Two of Pentacles appears in a tarot reading, it's safe to say you are juggling your priorities, your roles and responsibilities. For example, you might be a working parent, a general manager, an administrative assistant, a busy office worker, someone who works multiple jobs. So this card notes that you are doing an excellent job of balancing these different priorities, and you can take on whatever life throws at you. But it also reminds you that the line between coping with these demands and losing control is thin. You need to manage your time and energy and resources carefully so you don't lose balance. So right now it's very much a juggling act and you're doing wonderfully, but it's still a little tricky. And so if you can be a little more grounded and allow yourself to flow with that, to really decide what's a priority in your life is really what this card is calling for you to do. It says this card often appears when you find yourself rushing from one thing to the next, with little downtime in between. So when can you give yourself more downtime like you are doing right now? So bravo, it seems like you're on the right track. And it says that you might be telling yourself that you don't have enough time and you're in a rush. However, remember that you don't have to be busy all the time to get things done. Sometimes taking breaks is the most productive thing that you can do. And so I commend you for being here on this call today. I'm not sure that's the right word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. Props for being here. Props for taking time for yourself, because as I always say, if you don't fill up your own cup, right, then you can't give your best self to the people you love and who are most dear to you. And so that is of the highest good. Taking care of yourself is the highest priority always. So this card also calls to your awareness of the concept of balance and those parts of your life where you have it and where maybe you don't. So this fits really nicely into what we were kind of just reading about with the Tao Te Ching, which the Tao is always about balance, but ups and downs. Where can you find that middle road? Where do you have too much excess? What can you let go of and take that flow? Next, we have the Queen of Cups. and she was actually in the reversed position. So let's see what this story has to tell us and see what insights it has when you bring your story to this story. Cups tend to be about emotions, and the Queen tends to be more of a master of those. But in the reversed, it could be the opposite. So let's see what we have here. And let me show you the cards so that you can kind of get a feel of some of the imagery going on in this card. So you'll see that it looks like she's just touching the water. She's on the beach. The water usually represents the subconscious, and the land is either the conscious mind. So it looks like she's kind of balanced between the subconscious and conscious energy. She usually has to do with your intuition and your inner feelings and your ability to take care of yourself. So in the reversed position, this card means it's about your, like I said, your inner feelings, your self-care, self-love, and possibly some codependency. So let's take a look at that and see if it resonates with you. So when this card is reversed, you need to draw your attention inward and focus on your emotional well-being, which might be why you're here today. So good job on already taking that step. You're great at taking care of others. I know that to be true for some of you on this call. But now it's time to take care of you. This card suggests that you are emotionally drained because you've been so busy supporting others, which kind of goes with this. If you're taking on too much, that you might find yourself a little emotionally drained. So you need to set firm boundaries with loved ones so that they know that you love them, but you can't take on too much emotional baggage. You can hold space for people, but ultimately, other people are responsible for their own feelings and their experiences, and they need to go on their own journey to learn how to cope. So that's very true, I think, for any time you are sharing your emotions with somebody, that you have to remember that each person's emotions are their own, right? Sometimes we can get really caught up, at least I know I personally can, in, is this person okay? What if I make this decision? How is it going to affect them? But if you're moving from a place of authenticity, if you're very grounded, right, then you have to take care of yourself first and know that their emotions are their emotions, and you create that boundary and speak your truth. Does that make sense? This, as the reversed Queen of Cups, could mean that you're wrapped up in other people's emotional responses and created a codependent sort of relationship, and that's not healthy for either party. It's possible that you give too much of yourself away. So this is also about giving and receiving in balance. This also could be a sign that your intuition is on overdrive right now. But to hear it, you have to give yourself time and space to listen. Oprah Winfrey has this really great quote, and I'm not going to be able to quote it word for word, but what this card reminds me of is what she said, where she talks about a whisper in your mind or in yourself. She says it starts off as a little whisper, and if you aren't paying close attention to your internal environment, then it starts to get a little louder, then it starts to get a little louder and a little louder and a little louder. And if you continue to ignore it, then eventually it ends up showing up in your life in uncomfortable ways. The things that you need to listen to from your intuition. So this is about taking time to really listen and to tune into that inner voice. Really dial it in and ask yourself, what is going on here, really taking that time. It's a warning that you might be letting your heart rule your head, or your emotions might be overwhelming you. And if this resonates, it's time to ground yourself. And you do that by expressing your feelings in an appropriate way, right? finding the right environment to do that. That can be journaling, that can be sitting here with me on these lives, that can be talking to a therapist, that can be meditating. Take quiet time for yourself. Meditate, write in a journal. That's what I just said. Find the space to center and calm your soul. Listen carefully to your intuition and your inner voice, right? How is that resonating with you? I thought that was a great reading. I definitely got some insight out of that. And like I said, all of the cards always have certain insights that I think anybody can relate to, but let me know if that resonated with you. So after I do a tarot reading, I like to do just a little bit of journaling. And so if you would like to take time to just sort of reflect on those cards, reflect on the Tao, anything like that today, that might be a nice thing to do for yourself, right? But before we do, why don't we actually do a little meditation, and I'll guide you through that. And then if you want to journal after today's practice, you can do so, right? Get a little good scent, good smell going. A little cleansing after our reading. So allow yourself to get into a comfortable meditated position, whatever that is for you. Comfortable seated posture. Nice and tall. Good. I'm glad this is resonating with you in the chat. Once you're in a comfortable meditated position, I really feel like the theme of today's, both what we read in the Tao and the cards, was really about letting go of control, going with the flow, and listening to that internal guidance, right? Even that the Seven of Cups, right, was about you have to listen to your internal guidance to allow you to guide all these decisions that you have to be making, right? And the Two of Pentacles was really about letting go and finding that balance, really prioritizing. And the last card too was also about that intuition, listening internally. So I think meditation is just the right thing that we need. And then after your meditation, if you're feeling up to it, I would highly recommend doing some journaling, some reflecting. So let's take some deep breaths. Just a couple of deep cleansing breaths here. Audibly nice and long out of the mouth. And let's do what we call a cognitive sigh. You know, when you're upset, you hear somebody and they go, right? That cognitive sigh is the deep in and a long exhale. And it really helps to ease any emotional trouble neurologically in the mind. So we can do that on purpose, and we go. 2 sips into the nose, long exhale. Let the eyes fall closed. Find your own rhythm with this. Really long, drawn-out exhale. Allow it to become softer, more gentle. Start to settle into a more natural, effortless breath. As we settle into some space and time to just breathe, to just be, to just listen to our internal landscape. Like listening to a good friend, you don't have to force conversation. If something arises in the mind, just notice without judgment. And if the mind is quiet, then just enjoy. A moment to be, to breathe, to listen. And as we turn into this internal landscape, certain things might arise, and if ever you find yourself uncomfortable, know that you can always return back to the breath to ground you. You can say to yourself, I am inhaling, I am exhaling. Or you can simply let the mind wander to do as it does through phases of stillness and thought. Just be, just breathe. Everything softens, body and mind. If the mind has wandered, just notice and very gently return back to the breath. Breathing in, and allow the exhale to grow a little bit longer, a little more audibly from the mouth. And I'd like you to imagine that every inhale, you breathe in the energy you would like to carry with you for the rest of the evening. And every exhale, you let go of anything that isn't serving you at this time. Breathing in, everything fills up with the energy that you'd like to carry with you for the rest of the evening. And every exhale, release. Become more intentional with the breath, never forced, just on purpose, breathing in and letting go. Even deeper now. And as you breathe, I'll begin to count backwards from 5. And when I reach 1, your eyes will gently blink open. And you'll feel ready, deeply relaxed for the rest of your evening, whatever that entails. And I count 5, noticing your body calm and relaxed. 4, noticing the quality of the mind. 3, take 1 more deep breath in, sip at the top. 2, a very audible exhale. And 1, eyes blink open. And you find yourself here and now. You take a little stretch, another deep breath. Let's bring some movement in the body. Roll the shoulders. Oh my goodness, I'm creaking and cracking over here. Still breathing in whatever energy you hope to cultivate for yourself in the rest of your evening. Let's take a deep breath in as we raise our hands overhead, reaching up to the sky. On the exhale, letting go. Let's get a little spinal twist. And a little look at this adorable puppy over here to end our little meditation, to end and conclude our little practice. So at this time, I'd like you to ask yourself, what more can you do to conclude this practice in a way that would serve you best? So as suggested before, you can journal on today's session. You can take a moment to stretch a little deeper, stretch a little further. You can listen to the calming music that is at the end of my last slide. And I cannot thank you enough for being here. It absolutely fills me up with joy that you take space, that you take time for self-care, because like I said, when you fill up your cup, you're able to offer yourself your best self, right, to the world around you, and we all benefit from that, and I am very grateful for your efforts in doing so. Very, very grateful. And that you took the time to spend your evening with me. It makes my day doing what I do. You can finish your evening with a cup of tea. Ask yourself, how can I serve myself best in this manner? Thank you again so much for being here, and I will see you back here next Tuesday. Namaste, everybody. Have a beautiful night.